This video is about going beyond salvation, and it's about the goals that we have to achieve so that we can realize salvation was never the end goal. It's just a bare first step into a much larger universe. Now, if you've never done it, I have a salvation prayer on my website that I crafted together from the Bible verses that talk about salvation, and you can click on the link below and go there and pray that prayer with sincerity and start on this journey along with getting baptized. But beyond this step, there is the goal of being transformed into the image of Christ. We need to realize who we are and who God destined us to be. I've sat through so many sermons where they tell you in church that, hey, say the magic words and join the club and then everything's going to be great. And everyone quotes Romans 8:28 that, everything works together for the good of those who love God. But they forget the next verse. And Romans 8:29 says this, that for whom he foreknew, he predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. That this is God's goal for us through the many troubles and hardships we go through in life, through the sufferings that we endure and have to overcome, and through the works that we do, is to be transformed into the image of Christ. And Paul wrote in Philippians 3, he said, not that I've attained this already, but I press on into this goal. And so if you take a survey of the Bible and what it says about us, you're going to see that it calls us sons. That means children, sons and daughters. It calls us kings and priests. That's in Revelation. In Revelation 3, it goes on to say that he who overcomes will be granted the right to sit with me on my throne, just as I overcame and sat with my Father on his throne. And if we take that verse and we go back into some of the parables that Jesus taught about, we really see this in a powerful way, where Jesus talks about how the kingdom of heaven is like a king who went away but gave gifts to his servants, and different kinds of gifts, and gifts in different amounts. And the ones who use those gifts to bear fruit for his kingdom, to get a return on his investment, they were blessed with much, much more. That for the one who took his 10 talents and got 10 talents more, he was placed in charge of 10 cities. He was destined to rule in eternity. But for the one who did not use his talent, what he had was taken away and given to the one who had 10, because of the spiritual principle that he who has will be given more and he will have an abundance. But those who don't have what you had would be taken away and you lose it. This is not an area for deathbed confessions. It's something that has to be walked out. It's a journey we each have to go on to maturity in Christ throughout our lives. And it's a journey you want to start on as soon as possible. Now, I really do mean this, that we need to break our covenant with death and take on a new mindset. In John 6, Jesus talks about how if we're partaking of him, we have life, and those who come to him have life. And we want to accept that life now. Paul writes in Ephesians about how we're seated with Christ in heavenly places. We want to have access to those heavenly places now, while we're on this earth. So we see from looking at the Bible that it calls us according to what we're meant to be: sons, brothers, kings, priests, and more importantly, brides. That we are the bride of Christ, and we know that from Revelation 19, and that we're meant to be joined with him, with us in him, and him in us. This is a relationship of ultimate intimacy with our Creator. And it's a relationship we want to have now. In Matthew 25, Jesus tells a parable of the 10 virgins and how 5 were foolish and 5 were wise. And the wise had oil in their lamps. They had the Spirit inside them. They had the works that went along with it. And those works, as we know from Revelation 19, are like the clothing that we have. But we also know from John 15 that you can't have those works except for abiding in Christ. John 15 is the parable of the vine and the branches, that anyone who remains in Christ bears much fruit. And so we see this circular pattern that as we grow in intimacy with our God here on earth, we're growing on earth and growing and qualifying for our authority and for the rulership that we are meant to have in heaven.